marketing role, it's about understanding business 360.
How do you foray into a new category but still borrow brand equity despite the categories being a little different from each other?
When you have disruptive storytelling, it makes your consumers take notice in the category. It's very important that we see our agencies as partners and not vendors. Integrated media planning is the order of the day. You don't impose the brand point of view on influencer because every influencer in today's world has his own style. And yet, how do you leverage that style?
Welcome to Marketing Mavericks with IndieFolio. Today we've got Nandagopal Nair, who's the Vice President and Head of Brand and Communication at VGuard. We unpack his journey, talk about how he went from a service and consulting side to the brand side, how to do that transition, and got a lot of insights and advice for young marketeers as well as founders. Thanks a lot for your time and welcome to the podcast, Nandagopal.
Thank you, Kevin. Pleasure, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
The first question I ask everybody is how they started their marketing journey. If I'm not wrong, you actually studied commerce. So how is it that you decided that you want to make a career in this?
In fact, when I started, like you rightly said, after my schooling, which happened in Bangalore, I studied at the Bishop Cotton Boys School. And then I did my colleging in MES College, Bangalore. And that's when I took the commerce stream. In my college stint, we were a bunch of 6 or 7 who, used to actively participate in the Mad Ads competition. So if you ask me, that was really the trigger because we took part in virtually each and every competition across the country and won many, many awards, So that was my first initiation into the art of storytelling in brands. And though much of it was really spoofs and finding ways and how to say something about brands in a different way, but the fact of the matter was that it really got me interested in the whole role of brand building. And that was a small initiation which started. And that's when I, went in and there was a very interesting ad at that point of time which was asking for management trainees in one of the leading advertising agencies in Bangalore at that point of time. And I thought, let me give it a shot. And that's when it all began. I spent a good 13, 14 years in advertising across agencies, across locations, but largely with M.A. Bozell, which was one of my first agencies where I joined as a management trainee and went across their multiple offices, etc. And then, went into a full-fledged marketing role when I joined VGuard, which has now been close to about 15 years. And that was a complete shift from advertising to hardcore marketing.
Fantastic. When it comes to doing a marketeer's first job, people are very confused because you said do sales. Some people say that directly join brand marketing. Some people say join the agency side first, right? While there is no right answer, I'm aware. What is your general advice to young marketeers? What should be their first job?
Frankly, if you ask me, I think both has its pluses and minuses, and there are really no rights and wrongs. I think it can be a natural progression if you have started your career in advertising because there is some amount of understanding of brand, especially the creative side, how you build narratives, etc. Which is very important because as marketers, as you go, it's about how do you influence perception. And so it's very important that side is also strong enough. But if you walk into the thing, you straight away get into it. You engage with agencies, you learn on the job, but at the same time, you're closer to business. And therefore, what are the business challenges which are, impacting and how can marketing solve for these business challenges becomes the reality. I'm not taking anything away from advertising because I think what advertising has taught us is also about how do you build brands, right? How do you build differentiation in communication? How do you actually get brands to solve certain communication challenges which are there, right? And it gives you a nice walkway for that. But then when you move into the marketing role in an organization, I think the first thing that hits you is the fact that, it has to solve a business challenge, which is what the organization wants you to do. And that can be a bit of a different ballgame. So I think today when youngsters, graduate from their various B schools, etc., and they land roles both directly into the marketing side. And they come with a very, very structured understanding in terms of the theoretical side of, how you need to solve for business challenges. But I think when they come in and understand business, the need to adapt to the challenges, because the scenario can be very different from theory to practical. It's very important how they adapt, embrace, and then build their career and take it forward.
Incredible. I want to now ask you, if I'm in advertising and I want to move to the brand side, how do I beef myself up to actually become a good candidate to, let's say, become a brand manager one day for a large company?
I think there are quite a few things that you need to, adapt and understand. Understanding the fundamentals of, marketing is critical, because as you come, whereas advertising, like I said, gives you the leeway and the understanding in terms of, communication, which is a good thing to know and understand. It's about how do you take those learnings, and then when you come into the marketing role, it is about how do you take it and adapt it to solve real business challenges. That's the real understanding that you need to have if you want to become a successful marketer. Because invariably, you could have some disruptive communication which is getting created. But if it is not solving a business challenge, it is good to do, but it may not necessarily be what the organization of the business demands. So I think finding that balance between strong disruptive communication but also solving a real business challenge is really the crux of it. For example, in a company like VGuard, where we straddle almost over 20 plus product categories, and every category has its own nuance. So you need to understand the category threadbare. So it all starts by understanding the category. What is it that is really impacting the category? What are the levers that you need to actually look and press before you can make a difference to the category in the business? So I think these are things that when you come into the marketing role, it just doesn't stop at sheer going ahead with just the marketing piece. It's about understanding business 360, because and how does marketing in that play a role to deeply influence and have a positive outcome for business. That is what which will help them grow and definitely become good marketers for sure.
Can you give a glimpse into building the brand VGuard and all the challenges you encountered along the way?
When I moved into VGuard, I think we were at a very nascent stage in the journey. About 15 years ago, we were largely perceived as a very Kerala-centric brand. And the mandate given to me was very clear: become a truly aspirational pan-India brand, right? Now, when I came in from advertising, the first thing is to think about, communication. So what do I do? How do I create some disruptive communication? What can I do? But one of the key challenges that I realized with fact was that, that many of our product category, one, we had such a extensive portfolio of almost 20 plus brands, at probably at that point of time over 13, 14, but still an extensive portfolio. And many of them were, low involvement categories. Communication would have to work that much more harder to capture attention and drive recall. So communication purely from a communication side. And so we also, we actually embraced disruptive storytelling, in some way or the other to make a difference. So when I looked at it, it was also about the challenge was a little different. How do I build stature, right? I mean, for VGuard, because now the aspiration was to become a pan-India brand. And from a Kerala-centric brand, what do you do? One is you have the challenge of portfolio. The second was also we looked at that point of time, there were some stature building properties, like, for example, IPL, right? IPL was actually mushrooming into becoming a very, very significant property and was not really affordable for all the brands. So those brands who were actually visible on that platform were actually building a lot of stature for the organization. And so we looked at how could we, use or leverage this platform. So because it will give us a much needed national stage and reinforce our credibility as a leading player or a potential leading player in the consumer electrical space. And it also had another side to it, right? Because at that point of time, we were also envisaging building a network in the non-South markets, etc. And IPL was a good place to be in because there were very few brands who were participating because it was an expensive property and at that point of time. And the fact was that when it also enabled our sales and team, when they went and had conversations with the channel partners, the fact that, we were actually saying we're on IPL actually said, they actually took up and took notice of the brand, and say, okay, this is an upcoming brand. Maybe I should need to. So we looked at various levers in which it is. But I think the transformative phase came really with a brand repositioning exercise, which actually laid the foundation for making VGuard an aspirational brand. Now, this evolution was not just only about marketing. It was about reshaping the way consumers perceived our brand and our products and the role we play in their lives. At the time when I joined the organization, we probably were around 350, 400 crores, and today we're about 4,500 plus crores. The journey has been nothing short of accelerating. I mean, the milestones we have crossed. Really a testament to, I think, some bold marketing moves that we have taken, some strategic brand building initiatives that have been made, and let's say an unwavering commitment to our consumer, who's actually the reason as to why we are in business.
In today's digital world, is performance marketing more important than brand building? Can you give some examples?
With the advent of digital into the entire construct of marketing, I think a lot has changed. The fact of the matter is that sustained brand building remains critical for long term success. And the need of really today, the need of the hour is how do you balance the brand building initiatives and performance marketing, right? Because for a comprehensive consumer journey today, we know that it is not one or the other which matters, but you need the sustained brand building initiatives to actually look at it. Now, what did we do? I mean, fundamentally, we have also aligned our marketing efforts in this direction. We have also structured our marketing efforts into two segments, which is basically to holistically cover the entire consumer journey, if I may say so. We've understood and we've known, and there is enough proof of concept saying that research indicates that brands with initial consideration are 3x more likely to be purchased. So, which means our upper funnel activities will help achieve by building familiarity and memorability of the brand, whereas our lower funnel efforts will largely focus on being strategically present at very impactful key moments, when consumers enter the purchase cycle. Effectively, if I may say so, bridging awareness and conversion. So we have looked at it in two ways. One is, if I may say, upper funnel and lower funnel. If I look at upper funnel, it's the two A's, which is about awareness and affinity. And the lower funnel is more about the two C's, which is about consideration and conversion. Coming to your other point, the fact that is there a example that we can talk about which actually had a marketing intervention which made a lot of difference. I'll give you two examples. One is a category that we were entering for the first time, and which was the inverters category, which was a decade back, where we were actually foraying into the inverters category, which is what we call as a DUPS, inverters and batteries. And it's a very functional category. The scope for product differentiation is very limited. We envisaged on creating a very disruptive communication, but it actually built the category, and we had a very interesting commercial that was created for our inverters category on the basic generic premise that when there's a power cut at a very, very critical moment, it can impact your life. And we had used the situation of a night scenario and how it had a very bad impact because of a power cut, and we tied it back to the communication which said that the full-time power non-stop kushiya kind of a thing. What it did was it actually suddenly took notice in the category of, across the spectrum of very functional advertising. You suddenly had a very disruptive communication. The storytelling and the situation was so humorous that 8 to 10 years back, that TVC actually went viral, even in the digital world. So, and what it did to the brand was it suddenly took notice of the brand. The brand suddenly became, came to the forefront. Dealers were actually talking about it. The entire community was talking about it. So we started getting orders from the channel partners saying they were willing to actually stock our product in our new markets where we had absolutely very, very, very limited equity. And suddenly, if I may say so, actually built a category. The other was about a category, a very low involvement category like wires. What do you do with a category like that? One, it is tucked behind the walls, right? Now, when we looked at this category, right, and what are the narratives being played around in the category, we said, is there a higher order benefit that you can actually take and own in the category? We did a lot of extensive research, and the consumer truth was that because the involvement is so less, consumers believe that if I choose a particular brand of wires, I expect it to last because it's my house and it needs to last at least for 30 years, right? We actually took that and we, positioned where the category conversation was around wires that don't catch fire, etc., etc. We actually took the higher order benefit and said long-lasting wires. And what we did very interestingly was that we used something called wire art as a form of creative execution to actually carry this story forward. So, what happened was all the kind of communication that we kind of created and layered, we used the topical situations, etc., festivals, occasions, anything and everything to do with long-lasting. The brand took the opportunity to participate. See, we virtually made long-lasting our own. in a sense, and then very consistently, communicated that proposition, over a period of time. And what we realized was over a period of time, because in this category, your influencers, right, like your electricians, etc., are very, very critical stakeholders in decision making, right? Because they kind of influence the choice of brand, and because consumer involvement is very limited, right? I mean, and of course, now with a lot of category noise happening, consumers are aware more about brands and probably will question the influencer. What about this brand? What about XY brand? But we realized that long lasting as a proposition has started to get embedded in the community. Every opportunity where the brand could participate in a long lasting narrative, we actually took it. And for example, Kevin, if I may say so, when we had Durga Puja, we actually created a 150 kg structure of Durga Mata out of wires, right? And we actually amplified that and celebrated the long lasting festival of Durga Puja. The whole idea was that we looked at saying that if I stay true to a strong proposition for the brand in the category, how do I own it? And more importantly, consistently communicate the proposition so that I don't keep changing by the season, but over a period of time, consumers start connecting, whether in this category, whether it's consumers or influencers, they start connecting with the brand and they start, understanding what is the core proposition of that. And so this was something which was very interesting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for very specific examples. And you actually opened up, a segue to my next question, which is exactly this, right? Where when I was asking myself, when's the last time I decided how this wire should be in my house or this inverter should be in my house? And my parents have a place in their hometown where they've built a bungalow recently. And I remember the builder and even the painters and everybody asking me these 10 questions. And I was like, whatever you want to do, just do it, right? As long as it's on budget and it's like legit. We've got many products where the consumer relies on, like as you said, the influencer take a decision. What is the strategy of D2C currently in your company? Is that proof that consumers now actually want to know more about what's going on? If you can just share more insights on that.
The trigger has definitely been in the way the consumer behavior has changed over a period of time. Today, consumers have migrated from testing waters in online purchase to full-fledged purchase, right, across the shopping basket, right? I mean, whether it's groceries to as to durables. I mean, everything is happening online, and there's absolute comfort. And what has happened, Kevin, is also the pandemic has also further strengthened this behavior and the power of convenience, right? The fact that everything is available at your fingertips is just got ingrained in today's consumers' minds, and I think there's no looking back. So we have also seen an increasing movement, in the alternate channels for some of our categories, and hence made this move. We are relatively new in the D2C space, but it is enabling us to expand beyond the marketplaces. In today's context, more than 18 plus categories are already live in this space. And we are also backed by, a robust last mile delivery infrastructure to directly cater to consumers. The D2C side has also been integrated with the ONDC ecosystem, and orders have also started to flow. And needless to say, we are also deploying marketing technology platforms to strengthen our performance marketing. And with D2C, we are expanding our presence in social. I think going forward, there will be a significant part of our business.
I now want to jump into brand equity, right? You are a company where you started off with doing one thing very well, getting a lot of customers on that and marrying a brand to it. And then you introduced many more product lines with the power of that brand you actually had. Marketeers today are working in companies, which maybe have those 1-2 singular products, which sometimes are 90%, 80% of their overall top line. But then they happen to also be tasked to launch new products, launch new categories. So for those folks, right, how do you actually foray into a new category, but still borrow brand equity despite the categories probably, being a little different from each other? So if you could give an example, if you could share your thoughts, would be really helpful.
I think it depends where you are in the product journey and what is the slew of products that you have in your portfolio. Now, I'll give you an example with VGuard. Now, VGuard today straddles close to 20 plus product categories, right? But our flagship product has been stabilizers. I mean, we've been known and identified as a stabilizer brand because that's where, it all began, the journey all began. But what is important is that invariably the equity will stem from your flagship product category. And for us, the stabilizer, I mean, we are in today India's number one largest selling stabilizer. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of equity which flows from stabilizer to the other product categories. And when I say that, what are those values which are actually, flowing in from this category into the products that we introduce, into the stream? So whether we get into geysers, whether we get into inverters, etc., there is a flow of this in the mind of the consumer. Their stabilizer is solid, is reliable. You can be rest assured that the geyser will also be. Now, is this the only value that you need to have? May not be. But if you have a strong foundational, some of these strong foundational values which are relevant even in today's time, because as much as we may think that some of these are table stake values, but they're very relevant in the context of the consumer today, because none of the consumers want their products to fail. They want their products to last because there's a certain amount of money that I'm paying for it. For example, if I think that a certain category, it is the aesthetics which is actually driving consumer decision making in that particular category, then how do I layer it with that so that I give him a complete package, which is not just what he's seeking for in terms of a strong aesthetics in terms of ownership, but also solid reliability and dependability in terms of performance. So I think this is how it is, Kevin, and much of it flows from your flagship product category.
That's really helpful. Thanks for that. Talking about campaigns now, two pieces. You've had commercials where you recently, just I think some time ago, had politics as a theme. In that, you leveraging AI and animation. Then there was also some air cooler commercials which used a lot of humor. These are generally like risky bets, But today, if I can candidly tell you, right, humor is like the McDonald's, right? It's like if you don't know where to eat, you eat at McDonald's. It's like kuch idea अच्छा नहीं है, कुछ हंसा दो audience को, something should work out. And while brands, like the air cooler ad or even the Hari Sadhu ad of Naukri, I still remember them, all of those.
Right.
Now humor has become like everybody's doing humor. Even superhero films are humor. Even your big blockbusters are having forced humor. Humor has become everywhere, and comedians have taken up. They've become the new celebrities. So it's kind of like an overkill now. So could you tell us, how do you use humor, satire in the right way, and not make it seem like it's force fit?
Humor, if done well, is very long lasting, if I may say so, right? I mean, you don't mind seeing it over and over again because it will continue to bring a laugh into the mind. I mean, end of the day, we're a very emotional country. Humor needs to be used well and not as a slapstick tool, right? Now, with the air cooler communication, right, how in a category we disrupted a very functional category and came up with something which is very humorous. Now, the fact is we were a new entrant in the cooler category, and we were clear at the outset that we wanted to create a very disruptive and an engaging piece of content, that has largely which has been driven, like I was saying, on features and functionality. Now, the fact was long-lasting cooling, uninterrupted sleep was basically the core proposition for VGuard air coolers. Now, the brief to the agency was to actually move away from, the mundane, functional route and create a memorable piece of content. The TVC that was actually created was an out-and-out entertainer with a very hummable track, and it was in fact received very well. And the fact that it actually disrupted the category codes in terms of the communication. And that's what you do, right? When you disrupt the category, which is what I'm saying, and you have disruptive storytelling, it makes your consumers take notice of what you are saying or communicating in the category.
I couldn't agree more, I also want to talk about like actually creating this 360 campaign extensions, right? Several years ago, advertising content stack was a few campaigns a year, out of home, a print ad, maybe a radio jingle, and kaam khatam. Today, there are so many shelves to put your product on that you almost need to be like a publisher of content. That's really transformed a lot of, content production pipelines.
Yeah.
So that was the insight behind, actually starting IndieFolio and looking at a lot of, network and managing that network to help brands do scale work. Firstly, do you feel that it's the end of the annual one agency retainer model? And do you feel that more and more marketeers now want to work with more and more boutique agencies, founders, new studios, and freelancers?
The fact is, I think it's a hybrid model today. See, like you rightly said, Kevin, it's an explosion of content. And today, what you and I know, right, there is nobody wants to see any statics. everything is video, right? I mean, today, when we travel 20 plus categories, if I go back to them with a static creative, I mean, nobody's interested or keen to say, I mean, saying we don't want to see it like that, right? Video is exploded now, and the expectation, the fact is that you need to deliver it in double quick time, puts a lot of stress and puts a lot of pressure on internal marketing teams. It puts a lot of pressure on your advertising agencies to create content. So there are two parts, right? When I say hybrid approach, I think there is a certain amount of probably built-in resource that you will need within the construct of your marketing team. And it really depends from business to business, the kind of the width of work that is being dished out from the brand. For us as an organization, if I have 20 plus product categories, my ask is humongous. The fact is that there is a certain amount of work which I would do in-house. And there's obviously a lot of certain amount of work which I get done through my AOR, and probably a lot more other agencies who need to support me on content. Today, the days are gone where you can just work with one single agency to actually develop and furnish content, because it is not, let's say, humanly possible for the agency to also deploy that kind of resources to deliver the kind of content requirement that is actually needed by the brand. So what we do is, what is important now it is very important that when you align with, let's say, 4 or 5 agencies. Now there is an agency who's your AOR, who will actually set the tone, who will probably build the proposition, etc., and the master creative, if I may say so. But you may also have the amplification happening through certain other multiple agencies, because you need constant refurbishing of content at a very hectic pace, right? Now, what is critical and important is the agencies that you hire. It is important that they align to the values of the brand. They understand the brand sensibilities, so that there is a coherent communication which is going out from the brand stable, right? Because otherwise, if every agency starts communicating in their own manner and tonality, then you'll become a very disjointed brand. If you may ask me, what is the advantages of having an in-house creative team? See, one is, of course, like I was saying, there's a quick turnaround, right? They're just a few steps away, changes, last minute adjustments, etc. You can just have a quick turnaround. When you work in a marketing setup, right, in an organization, the fact is that there is also a lot of cross-functional teams that you need to collaborate with, because there's a lot of inputs coming in from different stakeholders, right? It can be R&D, it can be production, it can be service, it can be any team within the construct of the organization, right? So better collaboration is something that can happen, because, you can get in all these various stakeholders and, able to work very seamlessly. So that's another plus that you can have if you have an in-house creative. As far as costs are concerned, yeah, of course, the one-time setup cost is going to be very high, and it may probably even out in the long run. And the fact is, in some sense, you can say the ownership and control rests within the marketing team, right? I mean, because you are able to directly influence the process and the outcomes. There's a flip side to it also. See, because expertise can be very limited, right? And when you work with agencies, right, they've been doing this day in and day out, and they've been doing it across multiple brands, right? So the understanding that they bring to the table is very different, right? Because they bring a very collective understanding and nuance after working with multiple brands in multiple contexts, in multiple scenarios. So you get structured thinking as well as output to basis whatever is the communication or business challenge. So there are pros and cons into the whole process. But I think the merits and demerits, I think it needs to be a hybrid approach is where I would see it. But being very clear as to what you want to handle internally and what you want to handle externally with your larger agency partner ecosystem.
Understood. I think it's definitely a complex thing, but generally speaking, I think all your quick chore work tends to happen in-house, but all the thinking core work happens to be outside. Especially, I'm talking only in creative. Since you work with so many creative agencies, what separates a good agency from a great agency as per you?
One is, of course, a good, sound, strategic understanding. Because I think it's very important that a good agency takes time to thoroughly understand your brand, understand your business, understand your TG, the competitive landscape, and offer strategic insights and tailor campaigns to actually align with your overall business objectives. Two, if I may say so, creativity and innovation, right? I mean, it's very important in today's world where you have, it's so difficult to get the attention of your consumer and get into his mind space. How do you deliver some fresh creative ideas and resonate with your TG, right? The third would also be in terms of, like I was saying about collaboration. I think a good agency will actually maintain a very open, transparent communication channel, between the client and the agency, and also provide regular updates, seek feedback, because it has to be a two-way street. I mean, from both sides, right? And it's very important that we see our agencies as partners and not vendors. I can kind of firmly believe in that, because many a time, you're just that some of the mistakes that some of the marketers do is to look at them as vendors, and it's not the case. I mean, I think it has to be seen as equal partners who are actually delivering to your business objectives. The fourth can be something around, results and accountability. Very important. I think a good agency has to be result oriented and focused on measurable outcomes, and they need to understand where they stand after each performance. KPIs, they track performance. That's another very important thing. I think there are a lot of other softer skills which are also equally important, which is about adaptability, and the fact is that agencies also need to understand, be adaptable, and able to pivot when there's a challenge. Because see, in today's time, business is very volatile, right? I mean, your challenge may just swing from one to the other, right? And because of the way suddenly the business dynamics change. And of course, cultural fit, I think, is very, very important. Cultural fit. What is important is that you understand what are the values around which, this organization runs. And so it's very important that you value the company's culture, you respect the values, and how do you understand and work collaboratively, to ensure that you don't disturb some of these key tenets. Transparency, I would say, very important, whether it be in pricing and the value they provide. These are some of the things that, Kevin, that come top of mind, which you keep in mind.
Thanks for sharing that. There's a lot of chatter around the future of marketing. There's so many things happening. We've got AI, agentic AI, Gen AI. You've got a lot of data-backed decision-making happening. People are saying influencer is getting into UGC. Digital is going to be number one. AR and VR are coming and changing the way probably computing happens. So there's so much going around here, right? It's so overwhelming. And if I'm a young marketer and I want to try and understand, I know that a lot of people I speak to today are the people who decided against the odds 15 years ago and said, I will do digital. And they've actually grown very well, right? When digital was 1% and now it's 60%. So what is the frontier today in marketing which you think people should operate in, if you had to give that advice?
There's some very key trends which are emerging in the marketing paradigm. One, I think, is the basic and the fundamental, right, which is about the consumer behavioral change. Consumers seek to express themselves and they're not satisfied with any passive experience. So what has happened is, we all know, right, the fine screen is an extension of themselves, where they actually seek to, actually express their opinions, be in the moment, live the moment with friends, fam. So I think there's a dramatic shift in way, the consumer behavior has changed. Integrated media planning is the order of the day. Gone are the days when you look at them in silos. They can no longer be planned in silos. It needs a holistic approach as a need of the, allowing brands to create very impactful, synchronized campaigns which, reach your target audience across multiple platforms. So I think, and effectively too, right? The other big thing that we are seeing is short video consumption, right? Consumers are increasingly, preference for short form video has I think the estimates are set to reach some 650 million users by 2025. I mean, what is happening is that brands need to incorporate, engage with short video into their campaigns and effectively connect with the audience in a way that aligns with their preferences and media habits. Another critical tenet, UGC, like you rightly said, is becoming the order of the day. Today, consumers, trust their fellow consumers more than brands. Authenticity is something that they seek. So brands are also embracing this trend. They're also connecting with influencers. And what is importantly is that you don't impose the brand point of view on influencers, right? You give the influencers a brief and let the influence, because every influencer in today's world has his own style, his or her own style. It is becoming increasingly important because they are influencing consumer perceptions. The next thing I would say is creativity, grabbing attention. We all know that, attention spans have dwindled and things, but I would like to say one thing, Kevin. The fact of the matter is that if you have a good, engaging content, right, which is connects authentically to the consumer, I think there is no question about the fact that it needs to be within 10 seconds, 20 seconds. We have enough proof. We've done a content which is about 2 minutes for our New Year film, right? And we had an outstanding engagement because the content was a very powerful content, and it was very authentic, so it was able to connect with the consumers. So I think creativity in the digital era needs to be seen two ways. It's not only about creating these short quickies, if I may use the word, but also about how do you smartly use or create content that engages with the consumer, with authentic narratives. The other fact that we all know, the Gen Zs and the millennials they are all cord cutters, right? And though it may be a growing base as of today, but reaching the Gen Zs and the millennials through traditional television is virtually a no-go. I mean, you're not going to get them, right? So how do you then augment your linear TV plans? Obviously, today CTV has come in, connected TV is the new TV. And how do you engage with them is also an important challenge for marketers. So, leveraging AI helps, especially to deliver, content at scale. If you want to enable personalization experiences, and of course, to enhance overall campaign efficiency. So these are some things that come top of mind.
I think very exciting time to be. There's so much in so many areas.
Scary also, if you ask me.
Scary, definitely, but I always feel that you should operate at the frontier because it's a level playing ground. You may be talking to a 50-year-old CMO, but you probably have as much experience as them in, let's say, Gen AI, just for the heck of it, right? So I think playing in frontiers always accelerates you. And I think thanks for kind of giving a good blueprint of, where marketing paradigm is going. But one last parting thought for young marketeers who see themselves as a CMO one day, see themselves as a marketing leader one day, right? What's your advice to those folks, right? What can they do in their career to, do well and become a marketing leader one day?
Be passionate. If you're passionate about marketing, I think you should need to stay true to the consumer, understand your consumer day in and day out. It's very basic, but fundamentally, the more you understand your consumer, the better will you be able to tailor your marketing solutions, and it'll be better. You will be able to deliver to your business or marketing objectives. And you need to be adaptable. You need to understand business challenges. And I would think that the more marketers spend in understanding business is where you actually tend to grow, because end of the day you are also a contributing factor to enabling the growth of the business. Mm-hmm. So it is very, very important that you have the business lens in mind when you work, apart from and how do you deliver it through a strong marketing agenda, which I think budding CMOs, budding brand managers should keep in mind as they walk the journey.
Fantastic. I think, again, some golden advice for young marketeers. This marks the end of the podcast. Thank you so much. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was some very exciting questions. I mean, very insightful questions. And I think I had a good time chatting up with you.
It was a pleasure. For everybody who's stuck along, thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to hear another marketing leader, please like, share, and subscribe. A new episode will come out very, very soon. Bye-bye.